guys, welcome to Real Talk Cinema, where we break down movies, explore behind the scenes secrets, and dive deep into cinematic legends. Today, we are unraveling the story of Karate Kid, Legends 2025, a fresh chapter that unites the past, present, and future of this beloved franchise. Let's get started. The movie opens in Beijing, where teenage kung fu prodigy Li Fong trains passionately under his local master. The film begins with a wide, sweeping aerial shot of modern day Beijing, a city where centuries old temples sit quietly beneath the shadows of steel skyscrapers. The early morning sun filters through drifting fog, casting golden light across a serene courtyard tucked behind a traditional stone wall. Inside this hidden sanctuary, we meet Li Feng, a 16-year-old with quiet eyes and a fire burning in his soul. The camera slowly pulls in on Li, barefoot on the cold, worn stone, practicing his forms with flawless rhythm. His movements are sharp, controlled, and filled with purpose. Every step, every turn, every strike echoes with years of discipline. He's not just fighting air, he's in conversation with his ancestors. Standing just a few feet away, his Sifu, an elderly but commanding kung fu master, watches in silence. The master's wrinkled hands hold a bamboo staff, and his eyes, though aged, gleam with both pride and a lingering sorrow. He knows Li is special. His student moves not out of anger or arrogance, but with a rare blend of power and peace. There's weight in his motion, as if Li carries not only his training, but something heavier, the burden of a recent loss. Cut to flashes of old black and white family photographs pinned on a wooden wall, one in particular, of Li standing proudly beside his father, both dressed in martial arts robes. His father, we soon understand, was also a master, recently taken by tragedy. The courtyard training becomes intense. As the master calls out techniques, Li executes them with grit, sweat pouring down his temple. There's a moment where Li falters, his hand trembles ever so slightly. The master notices. He steps forward, placing a hand on Li's shoulder. Strength, he says in Mandarin, doesn't come from perfection. It comes from the pain we survive. Li nods silently. As the sun rises higher and city sounds slowly bleed in from the distance, Li finishes his final kata. He bows to his master, chest heaving, but eyes clear. In this quiet corner of Beijing, a warrior is being forged not to win battles, but to find peace. But Li's journey is only beginning. The calm of Li's disciplined world shatters like glass in the film's second major sequence. After a powerful training montage, the screen fades to a rainy night in the heart of Beijing, the kind of rain that feels heavy, like grief falling from the sky. Inside a modest but warm family home, we see Li Fong at the dinner table with his parents. His father, Master Fong, a respected martial arts teacher and former tournament champion, is sharing stories from his youth. His voice calm, his laugh genuine, his presence grounding. There's joy in the room, a rare sense of peace in a family still learning how to live again after hard times. But peace, in this world, is fleeting. Later that night, Master Fong steps out of the house to assist a local neighbor, a teenage student caught in an argument with gang members just outside a nearby alley. Without hesitation, Master Fong intervenes, not with fists, but with words, trying to de-escalate the growing tension. But one of the gang members, hot-headed and reckless, pulls a knife. There's a sudden blur of motion. Master Fong knocks the blade away with his legendary reflexes. He doesn't fight, only defends, but chaos erupts. One attacker charges blindly, and in the scuffle, a fatal blow is struck not out of hatred, but out of fear. The screen goes silent. The sound of rain fades. We cut to Li, awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of his mother's scream. A siren wails in the background, growing louder and louder. The camera lingers on Li's confused face as he runs toward the door. His world is about to change forever. The next shot is at the hospital. Stark white lights, the sterile silence of grief. Li's mother sits motionless in a chair, her eyes red and distant. A nurse gently tries to comfort her, but her body doesn't move. Lee stands at the doorway, unable to step forward. His fists are clenched, his breath shallow. He stares at the empty hospital bed. A man who once stood like a pillar of strength, a master, a father, a protector, is now gone. The following morning, the family dojo is shown empty. Dust lingers in the morning sunlight. Lee walks inside and finds his father's old black belt hanging on the wall. He takes it down gently and holds it close, tears falling silently onto the floor. This is the moment where Lee's story truly begins, not with victory but with loss. His journey is no longer just about martial arts. It's about carrying a legacy born from pain, love, and unfinished lessons. Lee's mother, Dr. Fong, decides to relocate with Lee to New York City for a fresh start and a new job in a city hospital. After the funeral, the once vibrant colors of Lee's world fade into muted grays. Beijing, once a place of tradition, discipline, and family, now feels hollow. The dojo remains locked, the sounds of practice silenced. Lee barely speaks. He trains alone, not to grow, but to remember. His mother, Dr. Mei Fong, quietly carries her own grief in the form of long hours and silent tears behind closed doors. She watches her son slowly wither in the shadow of his father's absence. But she knows the truth. The city that once gave them purpose now holds too many ghosts. Then one day, a letter arrives. A position opens at St. Anne's Hospital in New York City, prestigious, stable, and far from the memories that haunt their every corner. In a dimly lit living room, we witness the mother-son conversations, soft, hesitant, broken by long silences. Dr. Fong gently explains that moving to New York might be their chance at a new beginning. She's offered a senior surgical position, and though she doesn't say it aloud, she believes Lee needs distance from his pain to truly heal. Lee doesn't protest. He simply nods. Will it stop hurting there? I don't know, she whispers, but maybe we can breathe. The scene cuts to them packing up the house. The dojo is dismantled piece by piece, trophies boxed, scrolls rolled, his father's belt placed last in a wooden crate like a sacred relic. Lee stares at the empty training floor, his hands resting on the old wooden post where his father once stood. As the plane lifts off, the camera lingers on Lee staring out the window. Below, Beijing fades into the clouds. The screen fades to black and then bursts into life with the chaotic hum of New York City, the blare of taxis, towering buildings, crowds moving at the speed of survival. This is a new battlefield, one without rituals, one where Lee must rediscover who he is. And so begins the next chapter, from the peace of Beijing to the chaos of Brooklyn, where Lee must now find balance in a world that never stands still. In New York, Lee struggles to fit in at school, where cultural barriers and bullying isolate him. The camera opens on a cold, gray morning in Brooklyn. The streets are loud, chaotic, and unfamiliar. We see Lee Fong and his mother walking through the bustle, surrounded by honking cars, neon bodegas, and graffiti-tagged subway stations. Dr. Fong, dressed in scrubs, offers Lee a soft smile as she heads off to her first shift. Lee, backpack slung over one shoulder, stands alone in front of Hamilton High School, a towering red brick fortress that feels more like a battlefield than a place of learning. Inside, the school is a different kind of jungle. Halls are packed, voices are loud, and cliques are territorial. Lee, who once moved with quiet confidence in his Beijing dojo, now walks with uncertainty. His Mandarin-accented English draws mocking smirks. His quiet nature is mistaken for weakness. During his first lunch period, Lee sits alone. The cafeteria buzzes with laughter and chaos, but he eats in silence. When he finally gets the courage to ask to join a table, a student mimics his accent and laughs. The others follow suit. We're introduced to Connor Day, the school's top athlete, martial arts champion, and local idol. He doesn't attack Lee directly yet, but his smirk says everything. You don't belong here. In gym class, things turn worse. Lee's skills show through during a sparring drill, and it threatens the egos of the other boys. They begin to mock him as the Kung Fu Kid, turning the nickname into a weapon. One of them trips him in the locker room, another spills water on his shoes. None of it brutal, but all of it deliberate. Lee keeps his head down. In one heartbreaking moment, we see him on the phone with his mother late at night, sitting on the apartment balcony. He says he's fine, but the look in his eyes betrays the truth. He doesn't feel like himself. Not here, not anymore. The boy who once danced between shadows with tiger-like grace now sits in the dark, afraid to move. But a shift is coming. Pain, as always, is only the beginning. Because even in this foreign land, Lee's fire hasn't gone out. It's only looking for a way to rise. Lee befriends Alan, a socially awkward but clever classmate who offers support and friendship. The tone begins to shift in this chapter of the film, not dramatically, but like the first ray of sunlight slipping through a storm cloud. It's late afternoon in the school library, a quiet haven away from the chaos of crowded halls and whispering lockers. Lee, tired from another rough day, sits alone in the far corner, flipping through a dusty martial arts philosophy book. The camera lingers on his face, distant, guarded, almost hardened beyond his years. Then, from off-screen, a clumsy crash breaks the silence. Enter Alan, a wiry, fast-talking boy with glasses too big for his face and a backpack bursting with gadgets, notebooks, and snack wrappers. He trips over a chair, books scatter everywhere, and his laptop nearly falls off the table. Several kids snicker nearby. Lee glances up, and then quietly gathers one of Alan's fallen books and hands it back. Their eyes meet for the first time. No words, just a shared understanding. Two outsiders, two different kinds of silence. Alan, awkwardly. Thanks. Most people just watch the train wreck happen. Lee, with a small nod. You're welcome. That moment, though small, becomes the seed of an unlikely friendship. In the days that follow, Alan starts showing up during Lee's lunch breaks, not forcefully, but naturally. He brings strange homemade snacks, tells him about obscure sci-fi movies, and jokes nervously about the school's social hierarchy. To his surprise, Lee laughs softly, but genuinely. It's the first time we see Lee smile since Beijing. They bond over a shared love for strategy games and Bruce Lee movies. Alan, despite being clumsy in real life, knows an impressive amount of martial arts theory. He's a walking encyclopedia of fighting styles and classic kung fu cinema. You're like a real-life version of my favorite anime character, Alan jokes one day. You just need, a training montage and a dramatic rival? Lee smirks. I already have the rival, he says quietly. Their friendship deepens when Alan stands up for Lee during a group project, subtly deflecting a bully's comments without making a scene. Lee notices. He doesn't say thank you out loud, but the look in his eyes speaks volumes. In one key scene, we see them walking home together through Chinatown. Neon lights glow in puddles on the pavement. Alan shares his dream of one day designing martial arts video games with heroes who don't need to be loud to be strong. Lee listens. And for the first time in weeks, he doesn't feel so alone. In Alan, Lee doesn't just find a friend, he finds a mirror. Someone who understands the weight of being different and the strength it takes to survive it. At school, Lee meets Mia Lipani, a kind-hearted girl who becomes his close friend and possible love interest. It happens during a chaotic after-school rehearsal in the auditorium, a burst of light and music in contrast to the cold grays of Lee's usual school life. A student talent showcase is coming up, and the stage is a swirl of dancers, singers, and hopeful performers. Lee and Alan, roped into tech crew duty, are tasked with adjusting the lights. That's when Mia Lipani enters. She steps onto the stage, earbuds in, hoodie tied around her waist, and fire in her movement. A street-style dancer with raw edge and graceful confidence, Mia doesn't perform for applause, she performs like it's survival. The beat pulses through her limbs, every motion sharp and smooth like wind carving through stone. Lee watches from the control booth frozen, not from attraction at first, but something deeper, recognition. She's fighting too, just in a different way. After rehearsal, Lee bumps into her backstage, literally. She's holding a water bottle, he's carrying a ladder, the clatter draws everyone's eyes. Mia laughs first, effortlessly warm. You okay, Bruce Lee? She teases, offering her hand. You don't talk much, do you? Lee shrugs, awkward but intrigued. Alan tries to chime in, but Mia locks eyes with Lee, curious, not mocking. Over the next few weeks, they run into each other more in art class, in the hallways, and again during rehearsals. Mia's the kind of girl who breaks silences without forcing them. She talks about her big Italian family, her single mom who works 2 jobs, and her love for old vinyl records and rooftop sunsets. She never judges, she just listens and shares equally. One day, when Lee hesitates to defend himself from a hallway insult, she pulls him aside and says, You don't have to let them break you just to keep the peace. It hits him harder than any punch ever could. She starts joining him and Alan during lunch. She teaches Lee the rhythm of New York slang. He shows her Tai Chi breathing exercises. There's a moment on a school rooftop where Mia dances while Lee practices a form, both moving in their own worlds, yet somehow perfectly in sync. In a quiet scene, Mia finds a torn photo of Lee's father in his notebook. She doesn't ask about it, doesn't push. Instead, she just says, You don't have to carry him alone, you know. Lee looks at her and something in him shifts. Not love yet, but trust, and that's far more rare. In Mia, Lee finds not a savior or admirer, but an equal. Someone with scars of her own, and a heart big enough to carry others through the fire. Lee also encounters Connor Day, the local high school karate champion who views Lee as a threat. Enter Connor Day, the golden boy of Hamilton High. Blonde, broad-shouldered, and dangerously charismatic, Connor walks the halls like he owns them. Captain of the karate team, son of a wealthy businessman, and a social media star in his own right, he wears his popularity like a badge of power. To most students, Connor is a hero respected, envied, even feared. But behind the trophies and charm lies a quiet arrogance, sharpened by years of being untouchable. And when Li Fong transfers into school, that untouchability is suddenly tested. Their first encounter is subtle, a hallway collision outside the gym. Connor, surrounded by his entourage, bumps shoulders with Lee. A momentary pause. Lee apologizes. Connor smirks. You bow like that in Brooklyn and people will walk right over you. Lee says nothing, he just stares, calm, still. But Connor sees it, the balance, the control. And it rattles him. Things escalate in gym class. During a sparring session, Lee is paired with a classmate who throws wild, showy punches. Lee evades gracefully using pure kung fu fluidity to redirect every strike without ever hitting back. The class watches, stunned. Alan grins. Even Mia, stretching at the back, raises an eyebrow. Connor, watching from the sidelines, narrows his eyes. This kid's not just good, he's a problem. The turning point comes when Connor publicly challenges Lee to a friendly exhibition match during a school martial arts showcase. Everyone expects Lee to say no, but to their surprise and Connor's, Lee agrees. I don't fight for trophies, Lee says quietly, but I don't run from bullies either. From that moment, Connor's attitude shifts from smug to hostile. In the days leading up to the event, his teasing turns personal. He mocks Lee's background, his accent, even his father's death, masked under jokes and smirks. Mia and Alan urge Lee to let it go. But Connor isn't just testing Lee's skill. He's testing his patience, his pain, his pride. And Lee, for the first time, starts to feel his balance falter. In Connor, Lee faces more than just a rival fighter. He faces everything he came to America to escape: ego, dominance, and a world that mistakes kindness for weakness. The pressure builds. The stage is set. But what Lee doesn't know yet is that the man who will help him reclaim his power is just around the corner, sweeping the sidewalk in Chinatown, quietly watching from the shadows. After an altercation, Connor humiliates Lee in front of other students, showing his dominance. The atmosphere is thick with tension. The school hallway, usually filled with the chaotic hum of student chatter, falls silent as the confrontation unfolds. It begins with a simple shove. Lee, walking between classes, accidentally bumps into Connor. Connor smirks and pushes Lee back harder, his towering figure looming. Around them, a crowd quickly gathers, whispers, smirks, and the flicker of phones ready to capture every moment. Connor's voice cuts through the silence, sharp and cold. Watch where you're going, Kung Fu Kid. Lee stays calm, his eyes steady, refusing to rise to the bait. But Connor isn't done. He throws a quick jab, not full force, but enough to knock Lee off balance. The crowd gasps. Lee stumbles but catches himself. Then Connor cracks a cruel smile and challenges him to a quick sparring match right here, right now, in the middle of the hallway. Show everyone why you're out of place. Lee hesitates. The crowd grows louder, egging them on. Mia and Alan watch from the sidelines, tense but helpless. The match begins. Connor strikes aggressively, every move exaggerated to intimidate. Lee tries to keep his composure, using fluid, defensive moves learned from years of kung fu training. But this isn't a dojo, it's a public spectacle where strength is measured by dominance, not honor. In a brutal moment, Connor lands a swift kick to Lee's ribs, knocking the wind out of him. Lee falls to his knees. The crowd erupts into laughter, some recording on their phones. Connor leans close, his voice dripping with venom. This is your place, don't forget it. Lee's face flushes with shame, but his eyes burn with something deeper, a quiet promise that this humiliation is only the beginning of his journey. As Connor walks away, victorious and smug, the camera shifts to Mia and Alan's concerned faces. They know Lee's pride has been wounded, but they also know beneath that pain a fire is igniting. This moment isn't just about defeat, it's the crucible that will forge Lee's true strength. While working near a Chinatown alley, Lee sees an elderly man skillfully defuse a gang fight. Mr. Han, Jackie Chan. It's a late afternoon in Chinatown. The narrow alleys are alive with a swirl of colors, red lanterns hanging low, steam rising from street food stalls, and the hum of a neighborhood that never quite sleeps. Lee is helping his mother set up for a small community fundraiser near the market, carrying boxes, tidying tables, lost in thought. His bruised ribs from the school hallway fight still ache, but his mind races with self-doubt. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out nearby. A group of young men, faces hardened and eyes sharp, have surrounded a smaller gang, voices escalating into threats. The tension snaps like a live wire, the kind of raw danger Lee has never felt in a school hallway. Lee instinctively steps closer but freezes. That's when an elderly man appears from the shadows. Mr. Han, a quietly composed figure with weathered skin and calm, piercing eyes, steps between the groups. His posture is relaxed but commanding, a master's grace woven into every movement. Without raising his voice, Mr. Han moves fluidly, hands waving like water, deflecting fists and fists like leaves in the wind. His technique isn't about force but control. He redirects aggression with soft precision, turning potential violence into graceful disarmament. The fight dissolves like mist, the gangs dispersing with reluctant nods of respect. Lee watches, mesmerized. Mr. Han turns, eyes locking briefly with Lee's, a silent recognition, a nod of respect to a young warrior struggling to find his path. In that moment, Lee feels a spark, a flicker of hope that strength isn't just about fighting harder, but about mastering oneself. Lee follows Mr. Han and discovers he was once a renowned kung fu master who now works as handyman. After the alley incident, Lee's curiosity and respect for the mysterious man deepen. He watches as Mr. Han quietly goes about his work, fixing a squeaky door, tightening loose bolts on an old bicycle, sweeping the sidewalk with slow, deliberate strokes. Intrigued, Lee finally gathers the courage to approach. "How do you move like that?" Lee asks, eyes wide. Mr. Han smiles gently, his face a map of years and quiet strength. "I learned a long time ago that true power comes not from fighting, but from balance." Mr. Han invites Lee to his modest apartment above a dimly lit shop walls lined with faded photographs, worn kung fu scrolls, and trophies from a past life. There, in soft lamplight, Mr. Han shares his story. Once, he was a renowned kung fu master in China, a legend known for his unmatched skill and honorable spirit. He fought in tournaments, defended the weak, and inspired generations. But life's twists brought him to New York, where the battles aren't always fought with fists, and the fight for survival often means putting pride aside. To pay the bills, he now works as a handyman, blending into the city's pulse unnoticed but unbroken. His humility hides a fierce dedication to the art and a deep well of wisdom. He looks at Lee with steady eyes and says, "Talent is only the seed. Hard work, patience, and respect for the journey. That is what makes a true master." Lee feels something shift inside a door opening to a path he thought was closed. He silently vows, "If this man can carry such strength with such grace, maybe I can too." Mr. Han initially refuses to train Lee, but after seeing his persistence and passion, he agrees reluctantly. The sun had barely risen when Lee found himself standing outside the old, modest workshop where Mr. Han spent his days. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood and distant city noise, but to Lee, this place felt like the threshold to a new world, one he desperately wanted to enter. He pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. Mr. Han was there, quietly fixing a worn wooden chair, his hands moving with the practiced precision of a master craftsman. The man's face was a canvas of time and experience, calm, weathered, and thoughtful. Lee approached cautiously. "Sir," Lee began, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest, "I want to learn. I want to be strong. Not just to fight, but to understand. To protect, to honor my father's memory." Mr. Han set down his tools and looked up slowly, his eyes meeting Lee's. The weight behind his gaze was unmistakable, the pain of a past filled with battles both won and lost, sacrifices made in silence. "Training is not a game," Mr. Han said quietly, his voice low and firm. "It is a lifelong path filled with hardship, discipline, and sacrifice. Many come seeking glory or power. Most leave when the path demands more than they are willing to give." Lee swallowed hard but didn't falter. "I am willing," he said simply. Days passed. Each morning, Lee returned to Mr. Han's workshop, taking on any task asked of him, sweeping floors, carrying supplies, helping with repairs. The work was humble, repetitive, and far from the thrilling image of martial arts mastery Lee had imagined. Yet beneath the surface, Lee was learning lessons that couldn't be taught with punches or kicks: patience, humility, respect. One afternoon, under the dim light filtering through cracked windows, Lee attempted a kata, a traditional sequence of movements. His body tensed with frustration, muscles burning. His form was raw, uneven, filled with the eagerness of a beginner, but lacking control. He stumbled, nearly falling, breath ragged. Mr. Han watched in silence, then spoke without harshness, but with undeniable authority. "Strength without control is like a river. Without banks, it destroys everything in its path, including itself. True power comes not from force, but from balance. Balance in body, mind, and spirit." Lee looked up, sweat dripping from his brow, eyes fierce. "I don't want to be aimless. I want to be strong enough to protect those I care about, to honor my father's memory. I will endure whatever it takes." There was a long pause. Mr. Han's gaze softened as he saw beyond the boy's bruised body and tired heart. He saw fire, determination, and raw potential. Finally, with a slow, deliberate nod, Mr. Han spoke. "Very well, I will teach you, but understand this: the path you choose is not easy. You will be tested not only in body, but in spirit. Discipline, respect, and patience are the foundation. Without them, skill is meaningless." Lee's face brightened with a mix of relief and excitement. "Thank you, sir. I promise I will not waste this chance." A rare smile flickered on Mr. Han's lips, not one of amusement, but of cautious hope. "Then begin." That moment marked the start of a profound journey, one that would test every fiber of Lee's being, challenge his beliefs, and ultimately reshape his destiny. Mr. Han begins teaching Lee Kung Fu not for revenge, but for discipline, balance, and inner peace. The morning light filtered softly through the thin paper windows of Mr. Han's modest dojo, an unassuming room tucked above the bustling streets of Chinatown. The air smelled faintly of incense and old wood, carrying with it the quiet weight of generations of martial wisdom. Lee stood at attention, his body tense with anticipation and uncertainty. Across from him, Mr. Han's calm figure sat cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing steady and deep. There was no grand display of flashy moves or aggressive postures, only the serene stillness of a man who had mastered himself. Mr. Han opened his eyes and spoke softly. Kung Fu is not about defeating others. It is about conquering yourself. He motioned for Lee to follow him outside, where a small garden awaited rocks, bamboo, and the gentle trickle of water from a stone fountain. True strength lies not in power or speed, but in discipline, balance, and peace of mind. These are the roots of the art. The first lesson was not about punches or kicks, but about breath and presence. Mr. Han instructed Lee to stand still, to feel the ground beneath his feet, to listen to the rhythm of his heartbeat. Lee struggled to quiet his restless mind, but under the patient guidance of his mentor, he began to find moments of calm. Days turned into weeks. Training grew harder, but also deeper. Mr. Han taught Lee to move like water flowing, adaptable, soft, yet unyielding. They practiced forms that emphasized control over brute force, patience over haste. When Lee's temper flared or frustration bubbled to the surface, Mr. Han reminded him, Kung Fu is a journey within. Revenge only breeds more pain. Balance frees you. Slowly, Lee began to understand this was more than a fighting style. It was a way of life. Each motion was a meditation, each stance a lesson in humility and strength. At times, Lee faltered, burdened by his past and his losses. But Mr. Han's steady presence and unwavering belief became a beacon, guiding him back when darkness threatened to overwhelm. In the quiet moments as the sun set over the city skyline, Lee realized his training was transforming him, not just physically, but emotionally healing wounds that no fight could touch. This was the true power Mr. Han wanted Lee to learn, a power born not of vengeance, but of inner peace. Meanwhile, Mia encourages Lee to compete in the Tri-State Karate Championship, where Connor will also fight. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the city park, where Lee and Mia sat on a weathered bench beneath the gentle sway of cherry blossom trees. The soft petals drifted lazily through the air, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside Lee's heart. Mia looked at Lee with a warmth and confidence he rarely saw in himself. Lee, you've come so far, she said gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Your training with Mr. Han isn't just about defense or discipline, it's about showing the world who you really are. Lee's eyes flickered with doubt. But the championship? Connor is a fierce fighter. He's been the best for years. What if I'm not ready? Mia smiled, her voice steady and encouraging. It's not about being the best overnight. It's about courage stepping into the ring even when you're scared. You've got something special, Lee. Not just your skill, but your heart. She reached out and squeezed his hand. The Tri-State Karate Championship is coming up. It's your chance to prove not just to Connor, but to yourself, how far you've come. Lee swallowed hard, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The thought of facing Connor again, under the bright lights and the watchful eyes of the crowd, was terrifying. But Mia's faith sparked a new fire inside him. Maybe this wasn't just about fighting, it was about standing tall, facing fears, and claiming his own story. All right, Lee said quietly, determination edging into his voice. I'll do it. For my father, for Mr. Han, for me. Mia's smile was radiant, a beacon of hope in the uncertain journey ahead. Then let's get ready. This is just the beginning. Mr. Han realizes the karate-centric competition might be too overwhelming for Lee's kung fu style. The evening light filtered dimly through the paper windows of Mr. Han's dojo. The quiet hum of the city outside contrasted with the weighty conversation unfolding inside. Lee eagerly shared news of the upcoming Tri-State Karate Championship, eyes shining with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. He spoke of Connor, the champion, and the challenge ahead, a chance to prove himself. Mr. Han listened silently, his fingers tracing a faint line on the wooden floor. When Lee finished, the master's expression grew serious. Lee, Mr. Han began carefully, his voice measured and thoughtful. This tournament is steeped in karate tradition. The rules, the techniques, they differ greatly from Kung Fu. He paused, choosing his words with care. Karate emphasizes direct, powerful strikes, rigid stances, and strict formality. Kung Fu is fluid, adaptable, and sometimes unpredictable. Your style may clash with their expectations. Lee's brow furrowed, a mix of confusion and frustration rising. But I've trained hard. Isn't that enough? Mr. Han shook his head gently. Strength alone will not carry you. You must understand the difference between technique and tradition. The tournament will test not only your skill, but how well you can adapt to unfamiliar rules. He looked deeply into Lee's eyes. I worry the rigid structure might overwhelm you. But if you choose to fight, I will stand by you and help you prepare. Lee's resolve hardened. I want to try. Even if it's difficult, I need to face this. Mr. Han nodded slowly, respect flickering across his face. Then we must begin training differently. You must learn not only Kung Fu, but how to meet karate on its terms. In the silence that followed, the weight of the challenge settled over them, a test not just of strength, but of spirit and adaptability. Mr. Han contacts an old friend in California, Daniel LaRusso, Ralph Macchio, for help. As twilight settled over the city, casting long shadows across the streets, Mr. Han sat alone in his workshop. The flickering glow of a small lamp illuminated the worn surface of an ancient, weathered phone, a relic from a different era, much like the wisdom he carried. With a steady breath, he dialed a number that had been saved long ago, a connection forged years before through trials, battles, and respect. On the other end of the line, miles away in sunny California, Daniel LaRusso, once a young karate kid himself, now a seasoned mentor, answered with a mix of surprise and warmth. Han, it's been a while. What can I do for you? Mr. Han's voice was calm, but carried the urgency of a man seeking guidance for his protege. Daniel, I have a student here in New York, Li Feng, a young fighter skilled in Kung Fu, but soon to face a challenge unlike any he's trained for, the Tri-State Karate Championship. The rules, the style, it's not what he knows. Daniel's tone shifted to one of understanding and respect. I remember those early days. The jump from raw skill to mastering tournament karate isn't easy. Mr. Han nodded silently, knowing Daniel couldn't see him, but feeling the connection. I need your help to teach him the ways of karate, to blend his Kung Fu foundation with the precision and discipline he'll need. A thoughtful pause. Send him my way. I'll take him under my wing. Together, we can prepare him for this fight and maybe help him find his own path. Relief and hope flickered in Mr. Han's eyes. Thank you, Daniel. Lee will be ready. The call ended, but a new chapter had begun, one that would unite generations and styles, bridging East and West in the spirit of true martial arts. Daniel arrives in NYC and begins mentoring Lee in Miyagi-Do Karate, teaching him patience and strategy. The bustling streets of New York City hummed with their usual frenetic energy, honking taxis, chatter from busy sidewalks, and the distant clang of construction. But amid the urban chaos, a quiet presence stepped off a train at Grand Central Station. Daniel LaRusso, carrying the calm confidence of a seasoned martial artist, adjusted his jacket and took a deep breath. The city's overwhelming pace was unlike the sunny suburbs of California he was used to. But Daniel's mission was clear: to guide Li Feng through the delicate art of Miyagi-Do Karate. Within days, Daniel found Lee in the dim dojo above Mr. Han's workshop. Lee's form was still marked by his Kung Fu roots, fluid but unfamiliar with the Miyagi-Do discipline. Daniel smiled warmly, but spoke with gentle authority. Lee, Karate isn't just about strength or speed. Miyagi-Do teaches balance, patience, and strategy. You learn to respond, not react, to defend, not attack. Their training began with the basics: precise stances, focused breathing, and the legendary wax on, wax off techniques. Daniel watched carefully as Lee struggled with the repetition, frustration flickering across the boy's face. It's not about rushing through the motions, Daniel explained. It's about building muscle memory and respect for the movement. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel pushed Lee to see beyond the physical fight. He taught him to read an opponent's intent, to stay calm under pressure, and to find strength in stillness. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling session, Daniel placed a steady hand on Lee's shoulder. Remember, true karate is won before the fight begins in the mind and spirit. Lee nodded, feeling the weight and wisdom of those words settle deep inside him. Together, they forged a new path for Lee, one that blended the fluidity of Kung Fu with the precision of Miyagi-Do, preparing him not just to compete, but to transform. Lee now trains under the dual philosophies of Kung Fu and Miyagi-Do, combining styles for a unique edge. Morning light spilled gently through the windows of the dojo, illuminating the worn wooden floor where Lee stood in deep concentration. Around him hung the subtle echoes of two worlds: Mr. Han's graceful kung fu forms, fluid and flowing, and Daniel LaRusso's precise, disciplined Miyagi-Do karate techniques. Lee's movements were evolving, blending the soft circular motions of kung fu with the sharp, focused strikes and blocks of Miyagi-Do. Each step was a conversation between East and West, tradition and innovation. Mr. Han observed from a quiet corner, nodding approvingly. Daniel stood opposite, arms crossed, a proud smile barely hidden beneath his calm demeanor. Your kung fu gives you flexibility, Mr. Han said, voice steady. Your karate gives you structure. Together they make you unpredictable. Daniel added, this hybrid style isn't just fighting, it's adapting, using your own rhythm and strengths. That's the true spirit of martial arts. Lee felt a new confidence blooming inside him. No longer torn between two disciplines, he was creating something uniquely his own, a fusion that played to his strengths and honored his journey. As the session ended, Lee wiped sweat from his brow and looked up at his mentors. I'm ready for whatever comes next. In that moment, Lee was no longer just a student of Kung Fu or Karate. He was a warrior shaped by two legacies, and the fight ahead would reveal just how powerful that blend could be. The film explores a touching scene where Mr. Han and Daniel reflect on their mentors, Mr. Han's Sifu and Mr. Miyagi. The dojo was bathed in the soft amber glow of lantern light, the quiet hum of the city outside muffled by thick wooden walls. After a grueling day of training, Mr. Han and Daniel LaRusso sat cross-legged on the worn wooden floorboards, surrounded by the lingering scent of polished wood and distant incense. The air was heavy with unspoken memories, as two masters, each carrying their own scars, hopes, and wisdom, found solace in shared reflection. Daniel broke the silence, his voice low and reverent. Mr. Miyagi. He was more than a teacher. He was a guardian of tradition, but also a gentle guide who taught me that karate is not about winning fights. It's about mastering yourself, your fears, your anger, your doubts. He smiled softly, eyes misting at the memory. I remember those quiet mornings with him, the slow, deliberate movements, the way he'd make me do wax on, wax off, over and over. At the time, I thought it was just chores, but it was his way of teaching discipline, muscle memory, and patience. Mr. Han nodded slowly, his gaze distant, yet filled with warmth. My Sifu was the same, a man of deep spirit and unwavering discipline. He taught me Kung Fu wasn't just about physical strength, but about the harmony between body and soul. He would say, a true warrior fights with his heart, not just his hands. Control your spirit, or it will control you. He paused, hands resting lightly on his knees. I learned that humility is the foundation of all strength, that every strike, every block, must be an expression of respect for your opponent, for life itself. Daniel's eyes met his with quiet understanding. It's incredible how those lessons transcend time. Even though they're gone, their spirits live through us in every lesson we teach, every fight we don't fight, and every moment of calm we find before the storm. Mr. Hans sighed, a rare softness in his voice. Passing on their wisdom to Lee, it feels like carrying a torch through darkness, but also like planting a seed hoping it grows stronger and reaches beyond what we could ever imagine. They sat in reflective silence, two men bound by honor, loss, and the sacred duty of mentorship. The flickering shadows danced across their faces, reminders that while their mentor's time had ended, their legacy was eternal. In the end, Daniel said quietly, it's not the fight that defines us, it's the way we carry ourselves in life. Mr. Han smiled, nodding in agreement. And through Lee, their spirit will endure. As the lanterns flickered softly, the dojo became a sanctuary of remembrance, a place where past and present converged, and where the future of martial arts was quietly forged. Meanwhile, Connor's sensei teaches aggressive win-at-all-costs tactics, pushing Connor to fight dirty. In a dimly lit gym on the outskirts of the city, the air was thick with sweat and tension. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across battered punching bags and scuffed mats. The atmosphere here was worlds apart from the calm discipline of the dojo where Mr. Han and Daniel taught. Connor stood at the center of the room, muscles tense and eyes blazing with determination. Across from him, his sensei, a stern, grizzled man with a reputation for producing ruthless fighters, paced like a predator, scrutinizing every move with a sharp, unforgiving gaze. Connor! The sensei's voice cut through the silence like a whip. In this world, weakness is a death sentence. If you want to win, you don't fight fair. You exploit every opening, every flaw. The rules exist to be bent if not broken. The sensei's tone was cold, devoid of compassion, pushing Connor further into a mindset where victory justified any means. Use whatever it takes. Eye gouges, low blows, dirty tricks if it means standing on that podium, wearing that trophy, it's worth it. Connor's jaw clenched. The pressure was immense not just to win, but to dominate by any means necessary. His training was brutal. He was drilled to strike first, strike hard, and never show mercy. The sensei emphasized intimidation over respect, power over precision, and aggression over control. During sparring sessions, Connor was encouraged to exploit loopholes in the rules, targeting vulnerable spots and employing deceptive tactics to throw opponents off balance. The sensei's philosophy was simple. Winning was everything. Honor and discipline were luxuries for the weak. Remember, the sensei sneered during one harsh session, a fight isn't a dance, it's a war, and you're here to win, no matter the cost. This relentless conditioning hardened Connor's spirit, but also planted seeds of arrogance and recklessness. The boy who once had pure talent was now shaped into a weapon honed for destruction rather than growth. As the harsh lessons continued, Connor's eyes glinted not with respect for martial arts, but with a burning hunger to prove himself, to crush anyone who stood in his way, even if it meant abandoning every honorable principle. Outside the gym's cold walls, the city moved on, unaware of the storm brewing within a storm that would soon clash with Lee's balanced, disciplined path. Lee's growing confidence frustrates Connor, who increases his bullying and sabotage. The halls of the high school buzzed with restless energy, lockers slamming, footsteps echoing down the crowded corridors. But for Lee, every step carried a new weight, not just from the burden of being an outsider, but from the fiery confidence steadily building within him. Since beginning his training with Mr. Han and Daniel, Lee's posture had shifted subtly. His gaze was steadier, his movements more assured. It wasn't just the physical progress, it was the quiet, unshakable belief growing inside him that he belonged. But this change did not go unnoticed. Connor Day, the school's reigning karate champion, paced in the shadows, a storm brewing behind his sharp eyes. Where before he saw an easy target, now he faced a rival gaining ground. Each training session, each new skill Lee learned chipped away at Connor's dominance and his ego. Frustration gnawed at him. burning hotter with every quiet nod of respect Lee received from classmates, every whispered word praising his resilience. Unable to contain his anger, Connor's bullying escalated, no longer satisfied with mere. He orchestrated more calculated acts of sabotage. One afternoon, Lee found his locker door bent and scratched, his books scattered in the hall. The subtle but cruel pranks became relentless, his lunch mysteriously spilled, his shoes untied before gym class, whispers and laughter trailing after him in the corridors. Connor's tactics grew darker, moving beyond physical intimidation to psychological warfare. He whispered lies, spreading rumors that made Lee doubt himself. He pressured other students to isolate Lee, making the hallways feel colder, lonelier. But instead of breaking, Lee's resolve hardened. Each cruel act, each sneer from Connor, was met with quiet strength, a calm before a brewing storm. One day, after a particularly humiliating encounter in the cafeteria, Lee caught his reflection in the window, a face marked by determination, not defeat. In that moment, Lee understood. This was no longer just a fight for survival at school. It was a battle for respect, identity, and honor. Connor's rage only deepened, driving him to desperate measures as he sought to crush Lee's spirit before it could fully bloom. But Lee, guided by the wisdom of his mentors and the support of new friends, was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that true strength was forged not in anger, but in patience and resilience. Lee suffers a defeat in a school fight, leading him to question if he's truly ready for the tournament. The buzz of the crowded gym echoed around the room, a mix of jeers, gasps, and whispered bets filling the air like a storm ready to break. Under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Lee squared off against Connor, the tension between them thicker than the sweat dripping down their brows. Lee's heart pounded fiercely, adrenaline coursing through his veins. His mind flashed with memories of training sessions with Mr. Hahn and Daniel, the slow, deliberate movements, the lessons of balance and calm. But here, surrounded by the jeering crowd and the sting of Connor's glare, those lessons felt distant, almost fragile. The fight erupted with sudden ferocity. Connor's style was aggressive, fast, and brutal, fueled by his sensei's ruthless tactics. Lee dodged and blocked, drawing from his hybrid kung fu and Miyagi-Do training, but the pressure was relentless. A sharp strike caught Lee off guard. His body stumbled, chest heaving, pain radiating from a blow that landed harder than he expected. The gym erupted in noise, some cheering Connor, others shocked at Lee's faltering. Lee hit the mat. The world spun around him, and for a moment the noise faded to a low hum. Faces blurred, and the weight of the moment settled like a stone in his chest. Defeat. The harsh truth was undeniable. He had lost. Retreating to the edge of the gym, Lee sat alone, clutching his side where the pain throbbed. Doubt crashed in waves, a torrent of questions swirling in his mind. Am I really ready for the tournament? Have I trained enough? Is this fight something I can truly win? The confident image he had nurtured now felt fragile, shattered by the sting of failure. His thoughts turned inward, to the wisdom of his mentors. Mr. Han's words echoed softly. Discipline, balance, Inner peace, not just victory. Daniel's calm voice whispered, "Strength isn't just in your fists, but in your heart." But in the rawness of defeat, those lessons felt like distant echoes, hard to grasp, harder still to believe in. Lee's mother's encouraging face, Mia's hopeful smile, Alan's steadfast friendship all seemed like faint lights flickering at the edge of a dark tunnel. Sitting there, battered and uncertain, Lee faced a crossroads: surrender to doubt or rise, learn, and prepare to fight again, not just for victory, but for the growth that only struggle could bring. The path ahead was daunting, but within that moment of loss lay the seed of true courage. Mr. Han shows Lee a video of his father fighting with honor, reigniting Lee's inner drive. The quiet hum of the small training room was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in Lee's mind. After the bruising defeat, the weight of doubt pressed heavily on his shoulders. He sat slumped on a worn wooden bench, eyes cast downward, consumed by the sting of failure. Mr. Han entered slowly, his usual calm demeanor carrying a rare gravity. Without a word, he set an old tablet down in front of Lee, the screen flickering to life with a grainy but vivid video. The footage was from years ago, a glimpse into the past, where Lee's father, poised and focused, faced an opponent with serene strength. The camera caught every detail: the steady breath, the deliberate footwork, the flow of his movements not rushed, but purposeful. His strikes were neither flashy nor violent, but precise, disciplined, and filled with respect for the art and his adversary. Mr. Han's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "Your father fought not to dominate, but to honor the spirit of Kung Fu. He didn't seek to win by force alone, but by controlling his mind, his emotions, his very essence." As the video played, Lee's gaze fixed on his father's calm determination, the deep-rooted respect in every gesture. He saw not just a fighter, but a man who embodied the true heart of martial arts: humility, courage, and integrity. "This," Mr. Han continued, "is what you carry within you, the blood of a warrior who fights with honor, not anger. Remember that, and you will find your strength again." Lee's chest tightened, emotions welling: pride, sorrow, and a rekindling flame of purpose burning bright within. For the first time since his defeat, a spark of clarity cut through the fog of doubt. His journey was not just about winning trophies or proving himself to others. It was about walking the path his father began with discipline, heart, and honor. The video ended, but the impact lingered like a quiet storm, stirring the depths of Lee's spirit. Mr. Han placed a firm hand on Lee's shoulder. "Your father's legacy is not in the fights he won, but in the man he was. And now, it is your turn to honor that legacy." Lee straightened, eyes now burning with renewed resolve. The road ahead was still hard, but within him, the warrior's heart beat strong once more. With renewed spirit, Lee trains harder, mastering hybrid techniques that blend power and flow. The dawn light filtered gently through the windows of the small, humble dojo where Lee trained. The soft rays touched the worn wooden floor, illuminating dust motes that danced in the quiet air. Outside, the city was awakening, but inside, time seemed to slow, captured in the rhythm of Lee's breath and movements. Each morning, Lee rose earlier, pushing his body past limits he hadn't dared to test before. His muscles ached, sweat poured, and his spirit burned brighter with every strike, every stance, every fluid motion he practiced under the watchful eyes of Mr. Han and Daniel. This wasn't just training, it was transformation. The lessons from Mr. Han's Kung Fu emphasized flow, the continuous, graceful redirection of energy, using an opponent's force against them. It was about balance, patience, and precision. Daniel's Miyagi-Do karate, in contrast, was rooted in steadfast power, strong blocks, decisive strikes, and unyielding spirit. Lee struggled at first to reconcile these seemingly opposing disciplines. Sometimes his body was too rigid, other times too loose, but gradually, like water carving stone, a new harmony emerged. He learned to flow like a river, moving with grace and adaptability, yet strike like a hammer, focused and strong. His punches carried the weight of intention, his kicks the elegance of tradition. His defense was a dance, shifting seamlessly between yielding and resisting. Mr. Han watched with pride as Lee's confidence grew not from arrogance, but from mastery of this unique blend. Daniel nodded in approval, impressed by Lee's perseverance and openness. In the quiet solitude of training, Lee found moments of deep clarity. The fears that once shackled him began to dissolve, replaced by a steady calm rooted in understanding his own power, not just physical, but mental and spiritual. He practiced sequences over and over, perfecting the balance between offense and defense, aggression and patience. His body became a bridge between two worlds, ancient kung fu wisdom and modern karate discipline, forging a style that was wholly his own. Each day ended with Lee standing still, breathing deeply, feeling the energy flow through him, connected to his father's legacy, his mentor's guidance, and his own unwavering determination. The tournament loomed closer, but now Lee faced it not with doubt, but with a fierce, quiet confidence, ready to fight with honor, skill, and heart. On the day of the tournament, tension rises. Connor's dojo is favored to win, but Lee stays calm. The arena buzzed with an electric energy, a sea of faces from different dojos, spectators, and competitors filling the stands. Banners waved, announcing the prestigious Tri-State Karate Championship, where tradition and rivalry collided in a fierce contest of skill and spirit. Connor's dojo stood confidently at the edge of the mats, a tightly knit team clad in matching black guy, their reputation preceding them like a shadow. Whispers and nods circulated through the crowd. Many had already written off any challengers before the first match began. Connor himself moved with a predator's poise, a quiet storm ready to erupt, his eyes scanning for any sign of weakness in his opponents. The air around him crackled with a potent mix of aggression and expectation. Yet, amid the clamor and pressure, Lee stood apart, a calm center in the eye of the storm. His breath was slow, measured, a deliberate anchor in the sea of noise. The lessons from Mr. Han and Daniel echoed in his mind, reminding him that true strength wasn't just physical power or flashy moves. It was discipline, balance, and inner peace. Lee's gaze met the crowd briefly, then shifted to the familiar faces of his mentors. Mr. Han gave a subtle nod, Daniel offered a reassuring smile, and nearby, Mia and Alan's encouraging eyes locked with his. These were his pillars, his support grounding him in purpose. Around him, the tension thickened. Coaches barked instructions, opponents stretched and warmed up, the clatter of feet and the murmur of anticipation swirling like a storm about to break. But Lee breathed deeply, centering himself in that moment of chaos. He knew the odds. Connor's dojo was favored. The crowd expected the reigning champion to dominate. The pressure to prove himself was immense, but Lee was ready. Not to prove them wrong, not to silence the doubters, but to honor the path he had traveled from the streets of Beijing, through loss, doubt, and relentless training to this very mat. As the announcer's voice boomed across the arena, calling the first match to begin, Lee stood poised, calm, focused, and quietly fierce, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead with heart, skill, and unwavering spirit. Round after round, Lee advances, defeating strong opponents using creative fusion moves. The roar of the crowd swelled louder with each passing round, the air thick with excitement and disbelief. The Tri-State Karate Championship was no longer just a stage for raw power. It had become a battleground where skill, heart, and ingenuity defined true strength. Lee stepped onto the mat with steady resolve, his movements a testament to months of grueling training. Each opponent was a new challenge, fierce, determined, and hungry for victory. But Lee's style was unlike anything they had faced before. He flowed seamlessly between the fluid grace of Kung Fu and the disciplined force of Miyagi-Do Karate, weaving techniques that caught even the most seasoned fighters off guard. With a spinning sweep, followed by a precise Miyagi-Do block, Lee disarmed one opponent's aggressive charge. A sudden palm strike, rooted in Kung Fu, shifted the momentum mid-fight, turning defense into a swift counterattack. The crowd gasped as Lee executed a creative fusion move, a graceful yet powerful blend of flowing footwork and a sharp karate punch, sending his rival to the mat. Round after round, the pattern repeated. Lee adapted, learning and evolving in real time, using both strength and strategy. His movements were a dance of contrasts, fierce yet controlled, quick yet deliberate. His face showed focus, but beneath it flickered a quiet joy, the thrill of testing himself, the satisfaction of honoring both his father's legacy and his mentor's teachings. Meanwhile, murmurs began circulating through the stands. Who is this fighter? He's unlike anyone we've seen. Even Connor's team shifted uneasily, recognizing the rising threat Lee represented. With each victory, Lee's confidence deepened, not arrogance, but a steady belief rooted in the harmony of mind, body, and spirit. As he prepared for the semifinals, Lee knew the hardest battles lay ahead. But with every creative move, every fusion strike, he proved not only his skill, but his heart, the true mark of a champion. In the semi-final, Lee injures his leg, but insists on continuing echoing the original Karate Kid spirit. The semi-final match began with a tense silence, broken only by the sharp exhalations of the fighters and the distant hum of the crowd. Lee faced a formidable opponent, fast, tactical, and merciless, pushing Lee to the limits of his endurance and skill. Midway through the bout, a sudden misstep changed everything. Lee twisted awkwardly while dodging a sweeping kick. A sharp, searing pain shot through his leg, a deep strain that threatened to buckle his stance. The referee's whistle blew sharply, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Lee clenched his teeth, his vision narrowing as the pain radiated through him like wildfire. Mr. Han's voice rang clear from the sidelines, filled with concern. Lee, you need to stop. It's too dangerous. Daniel paced anxiously, torn between worry and admiration. Yet, through the haze of pain, Lee's eyes burned with unyielding resolve. He shook his head, steadying his breath. I can't stop. I won't stop. This is my fight. It was a moment that echoed the spirit of the original Karate Kid, the indomitable will to push beyond pain, to fight not just for victory, but for honor, pride, and self-belief. With slow, deliberate steps, Lee adjusted his stance, learning to compensate for the injury. Every movement was measured, every strike calculated with new precision, blending his hybrid style in a way that used his opponent's momentum against them. The crowd held its breath as Lee wove through the pain, delivering strikes with a fierce grace that defied his injury. His leg throbbed, every step a reminder of the risk, but his spirit was unbreakable. He fought not just with his body, but with the legacy of his father, the guidance of his mentors, and the support of those who believed in him. The semi-final was no longer just a test of skill. It was a testament to courage, resilience, and heart. As the match drew to a close, Lee's determination shone brightest, a beacon of true warrior spirit ready to face whatever lay ahead. The final showdown, Lee versus Connor Kung Fu versus aggressive karate. The arena fell into a heavy, expectant silence as Lee and Connor faced each other across the mat. Two warriors bound by rivalry, respect, and the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Connor's eyes burned with fierce determination, fueled by years of training steeped in raw power and relentless aggression. His stance was tight, fists clenched like iron traps, ready to dominate with explosive strikes and overpowering force. Lee, battered yet unbowed, grounded himself in the calm center of his being. His breath steady, his mind clear. He embodied the harmony of Kung Fu's flowing grace and Miyagi-Do's steadfast discipline, a fusion forged through pain, perseverance, and honor. As the bell rang, Connor surged forward, a whirlwind of aggressive punches and rapid-fire kicks, each blow aimed to overwhelm and break Lee's defenses. His style was fierce, a relentless assault designed to intimidate and conquer. But Lee moved like water, slipping through Connor's attacks with fluid footwork, redirecting the energy with subtle parries and precise counters. His strikes were measured, blending Kung Fu's circular movements with the direct power of karate. The crowd watched in awe as Lee's hybrid style unfolded a dance of contrasts, where aggression met calm, force met flow, and strength met strategy. Connor's frustration grew with every missed strike and every deft counter. He pushed harder, risking mistakes, while Lee's patience never wavered, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. Then, with a lightning-fast combination, Lee delivered a decisive palm strike followed by a Miyagi-Do crane kick, a technique Daniel had taught him, catching Connor off guard and shifting the battle's momentum. Connor staggered but roared back with a powerful roundhouse kick, narrowly missing Lee's head. The fight escalated into a breathtaking exchange, a clash of wills and styles that tested every ounce of their skill and spirit. Sweat, grit, and determination filled the air as the two fighters pushed beyond their limits. Lee's leg injury throbbed, but he fought with renewed heart, channeling his father's legacy and the teachings of his mentors. In the final moments, Lee saw an opening, a brief lapse in Connor's guard, and moved with decisive calm, delivering a perfect strike that brought the crowd to their feet. The bell sounded, and silence fell, broken only by the pounding of hearts and the echo of respect between two warriors who had fought not just for victory, but for honor. Lee stood tall, victorious not merely by score, but by embodying the true spirit of martial arts: discipline, balance, courage, and humility. After a brutal, emotional fight, Lee uses a graceful but unexpected move taught by Mr. Han to defeat Connor. The final match had pushed both fighters to the brink, sweat-soaked, breathing heavy, muscles screaming with exhaustion and pain. The crowd was on edge, hanging on to every move, every feint, every breathless moment of this intense showdown. Connor charged forward again, fierce and aggressive, determined to end the match with brute force. His strikes were relentless, aimed at breaking Lee's defenses and crushing his spirit. Lee danced just out of reach, his body flowing like water, weaving between blows, his breathing steady despite the searing pain in his injured leg. His eyes locked onto Connor's movements, searching for the slightest opening, a weakness, a pattern, a moment to turn the tide. Then, as Connor lunged with a powerful uppercut, Lee recalled Mr. Han's teachings, a secret technique rooted in ancient Kung Fu philosophy, emphasizing fluidity, redirection, and grace rather than sheer force. In one seamless, almost poetic motion, Lee sidestepped, pivoting on his good leg, his arms tracing a wide arc that absorbed and redirected Connor's energy. The crowd gasped as Lee's hand gently but firmly guided Connor's momentum, spinning him off balance. Lee followed through with a sweeping, elegant palm strike that sent Connor sprawling to the mat, defeated but dignified. The silence that followed was profound, the kind that fills a moment where respect, awe, and the weight of a hard-fought battle converge. Lee stood, breath steady, sweat glistening, embodying the harmony of strength and serenity. He looked to Mr. Han, who nodded with quiet pride, then to Daniel, Mia, and Alan, all beaming with admiration and relief. Lee wins the trophy, but more importantly, earns respect and unity from everyone. Even Connor shows a hint of respect. The final bell echoed through the arena, signaling the end of an unforgettable battle. The crowd erupted into applause, a thunderous celebration, not just for the winner, but for the spirit of martial arts itself. Lee stood tall on the podium, the gleaming trophy in his hands reflecting the bright lights above. But beyond the gleam of victory, there was something deeper, a quiet triumph of heart, resilience, and honor. As the cheers washed over him, Lee's gaze swept across the room to Mr. Han, whose weathered face softened with pride, to Daniel, who gave a subtle nod of approval, to Mia and Alan, whose smiles radiated joy and belief. Even Connor, still catching his breath and nursing his bruises, approached slowly. The fierce glare was gone, replaced by a reluctant, almost hesitant respect. With a slight bow of his head and a rare, genuine smile, Connor extended a hand, a silent acknowledgement that transcended rivalry. Lee accepted, their handshake firm yet respectful, sealing a newfound understanding born of struggle and shared passion. In that moment, the tournament was no longer about competition alone. It was about unity, growth, and the unbreakable bonds forged through honor and respect. The crowd sensed it too, rising to their feet in a standing ovation that echoed the timeless values of martial arts humility, courage, and the power of connection. Lee's journey had come full circle from a lonely boy struggling to fit in to a champion who had earned not only a trophy but the respect of an entire community. As he lifted the trophy higher, the future seemed wide open, full of promise, friendship, and the endless path of learning ahead. The film ends with Mr. Han, Daniel, and Lee bowing together, symbolizing a new generation of balance and legacy. The arena's lights dimmed softly as the crowd's cheers slowly faded into a respectful hush. Center stage, the atmosphere shifted from competition to reverence, a sacred moment that transcended the fight. Mr. Han stepped forward, his eyes calm yet shining with pride and wisdom earned over decades. Beside him stood Daniel LaRusso, embodying the steady patience and honor of Miyagi-Do. And at the heart of them both stood Lee the young warrior, whose journey had bridged worlds, styles, and generations. Together, the three bowed deeply in unison, a gesture rich with meaning. It was more than tradition, it was a symbol of harmony, the blending of cultures, philosophies, and legacies passed down through time. The bow spoke of respect for the past, gratitude for the present, and hope for the future. In that silent, profound moment, a new chapter was written, one where balance between strength and serenity, aggression and discipline, was no longer a distant ideal, but a living reality. The camera slowly pulled back as the trio stood upright, their faces serene, united in purpose. The screen faded to black, leaving the audience with a lasting impression that true mastery is not just about fighting, but about honoring one's roots while forging a path forward together. After an intense and grueling final match, Li Fong faces off against Connor Day, his toughest rival and the reigning karate champion. Despite a serious injury, Li pushes through, combining the wisdom of Mr. Han's Kung Fu and Daniel LaRusso's Miyagi-Do karate. With a clever and graceful move, he ultimately defeats Connor, earning the championship trophy. But the victory is more than just about winning the tournament. It symbolizes Lee's personal growth, resilience, and acceptance in his new home. Even Connor, humbled by Lee's spirit, offers a respectful nod, hinting at possible future friendship. The film closes on a heartwarming scene where Lee, Mr. Han, and Daniel stand united, bowing in mutual respect. This moment honors the past while embracing the future, the true essence of martial arts and the Karate Kid legacy. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Karate Kid Legends 2025, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome movie breakdowns, behind-the-scenes facts, and fan theories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload from Real Talk Cinema, where we keep it real, cinematic, and legendary. What did you think of Li Feng's journey? Drop your thoughts below and let me know which movie you want me to cover next. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving movies, and keep it real.